Today is day 27 of the Karen Read trial. I'm going to give you my daily recap. Today is a surprise half day. I wasn't aware that it was going to be a half day, and we got more surprise news at the end of court that there is no court tomorrow. It is going to be 85 degrees in Boston, which is the first hot day, I guess, and it's very hot in the courtroom. There's no central air, and they have a bunch of fans and like window ACs running, and it's very loud, and apparently they can't have court, which I do not understand because she keeps saying we're ahead of schedule, so we're not going to have court tomorrow because it's going to be very hot and the officers are worried, blah, blah, blah. Why can't you just finish this trial earlier? Why do we have to get to 4th of July? Why can't this just end sooner? Be ahead of schedule, but let's just be done with it. Sorry, I'm just a little worked up about that. But today we had 2 new defense witnesses on the stands. The first witness is Brian Loughran. He works for the Department of Public Works in the town of Canton. He grew up in Canton. His nickname is Lucky. He testified last trial as well. In the nicest way possible, I would say that Lucky is a gentle soul. I would say that he has no ill intent at all from what you can tell through his testimony. I feel like he's very honest and he is just trying to do the right thing. He knows the Albert family very well. He worked at D&E Pizza, which Chris Albert owns, for 8 years, starting when he was 26. He was delivering pizzas. He knows all the other Albert brothers. He names them all. He went to Canton High School too. His brother is a selectman in the Canton town, and Chris Albert is also a selectman on the board, so there's that relationship as well. He works for the Canton DPW, so he drives a plow, and as we all know, impending snow on January 29th, he was called into work, and he was assigned Route 11, which covers Fairview Road. This is a picture of the truck that he drives. They joke that the name of it is Franken truck because it kind of has some mismatched pieces and parts, but it sits really high up. It has really great lighting to be able to see everything. He explains his process of loading up and getting ready for the night, and that his route includes 34 Fairview, Cedar Crest, a lot of these key roads that we've heard of before. His first pass on Fairview was on the Albert side of the road, and that was at 2:45 a.m. He says he could not see anything in the lawn. There was nothing there, and he is like head on a swivel looking out for everything. He says, God forbid he were to hit an animal or anything, he's always keeping an eye out. He does one more pass, and then at 3:30 a.m. he says in front of 34 Fairview in the flagpole area, I think he said like 3 feet or so past the front door, there was a Ford Edge, and he took note of this because the Albert family is not ever known to park vehicles on the road. He says he's never seen them park on the street like this before, and it is protocol to actually call your superior at the DPW to get the vehicle moved when there's a snow emergency. They could end up towing it, but he said he didn't do it out of courtesy for the Albert family, knowing he's a first responder. One of the next times he was making a pass, he says that he couldn't access Fairview because police had the road closed around 6 a.m. I forgot to show this screenshot, but this is 34 Fairview, so this is the area that he plows with Spring Lane, Cedar Crest, all there. Yannetti is questioning him now about the first time that anyone reached out to him was 2 weeks past this incident, and this was by a private investigator that was hired by the defense, and other officers did end up approaching him in 2023. Those were not Canton PD or Mass State Police officers. He had never spoken to Proctor or another investigator from the Mass State Police or Canton PD before that. And Yannetti jumps right to it. How strong is your memory? He says, very strong. And that just like solidified in that moment, like he made note of all of this. He's testified about this multiple times. He's talked about it multiple times. There's no more questions after that. We have Hank Brennan doing the cross exam, and he kind of tries to undermine Lucky, which is really sad. He was like, you've talked to a lot of people about this case. He says, yes, and your memory has changed. And he was like, it has not changed. He's very adamant. He asked if a blogger had threatened him to testify in a certain way. He says no, and he says, do you know that blogger now? He said yes. And do you follow him? He says yes. This was a very awkward moment where the camera zoomed in on Turtle Boy. This is the blogger he's referring to. Turtle Boy was looking right at the camera for a little while there too. It was just like a very awkward moment. Brennan asked if he's been celebrated in a certain way, for testifying in a certain way, and he says yes. So after the first trial, people were like, good for you, Lucky, you did the right thing, so proud of him. They started a GoFundMe, I think, for this man. So that's what Brennan is alluding to. He's asking about June 5th, 2024. Before he testified, there were private pictures of him released. He said he didn't want them released, and he said it wasn't embarrassing, it was more aggravating. His brother was getting dragged into it too. And he said that he didn't really follow too much online stuff about the blogger and everything because his wife died and he was dealing with that. And I was like, this man is not going to seriously keep questioning him, is he? And that's pretty much it. I did forget to show you, there was, Brennan brought up police surveillance camera footage that was from the vehicle camera, and Lucky identifies that you can actually see him here in the frame. And then there was also one other line of questioning that I must have tuned out for, but it was about this dumpster video. I guess that's near 34 Fairview. If anybody knows what this is about, please post a comment because it was over my head. I just wasn't even listening, I guess. The next witness is Karina Kolakithis, and she testified in the first trial. She's a friend of John O'Keefe. She was called last time, I believe, by the Commonwealth, I want to say very early. And her and her husband are friends with John O'Keefe. Her youngest daughter is good friends with John's niece. And she had a basketball game to go to for her daughter that night on January 28th. She reluctantly ended up going out after to meet her husband at the Waterfall Bar after that basketball game, but she said that she did want to go home. At that point, she knew that Jen McCabe was there, and she got introduced to the Albert family and all of them. She was drinking water. She said she was getting ready to leave, and Jen and Karen arrived, and she decided she wanted to stay because she wanted to hang out with Karen. She says that John was in a good mood, and he had brought up that his niece got into Bishop Fian. He was happy and joyful, and she says that she hung out with Karen for the most of the night. They sat pretty close to each other, were talking closely because the band was going. They end up showing a lot of video evidence of her inside the bar, and this is really to introduce a lot of evidence that we've seen circulating online for the jury, but this is the second time that the jury has seen the waterfall footage. She points out that this is their group. She identifies herself here. She's sitting down with the white jacket hanging off of her chair. This is Karen, and this was actually Brian Higgins here. Later on, there is a little space area here where John O'Keefe appears. That's Jen McCabe. She goes through and identifies these people. She said there was a point in time, it's on surveillance, where John actually came up to Karen and he kisses her on the forehead, and she thought that was really sweet. She said it stuck out to her in her memory, and you can see that Brian Higgins is here right in front of where that happened, and he was looking directly at them. So everybody is winding down. The bar is closing. They've done last call. Her husband and Matt McCabe ended up helping out the band to kind of like clean up. And she noticed Higgins and Albert were leaving together. They were already closer to the door. She identified John in a screenshot. He was at the bar here. And in one of the screenshots, he's looking back over towards the door area where Higgins and Albert are. It's this one right here. You can see him there. And you can see this is what John was looking at. It was really great questioning done by the attorneys. This is Chris Albert. He's grabbing Brian Higgins' arm. He has to grab his arm twice in the video. And like there was some sort of hand gesture that Higgins had made, kind of like summoning John. And right here, this is Brian Albert. She says that she overheard Jen say to Karen, "Hey, you're coming with me," and that kind of just stood out to her because then later on she saw Karen with John. She said that yes, Karen was drinking. She knew she was drinking alcohol, but she's a pharmacist. She didn't really think that she was too drunk. She was not incoherent. She was not slurring her words, and that really probably stood out to the jury. Brennan only asked, like, was everyone in a good mood? Was John nice? And then he has no further questions, which was really smart of him because I think this was a great witness and you don't want to do that.